lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and I have a very awesome guest today. I have the legendary Kenneth Landgraf here with me, and I am super stoked to have you on today, man. So happy you got a Kickstarter that's live right now as of the time we're talking. So, lot to unpack. Welcome to the show, man.
Well, thanks a lot, Ryan.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, I always ask this question. It's especially if it's the first time I'm talking to somebody, but I always like to know, like, kind of what started your love for comic books.
Well, I wanted to do that ever since I was a kid when I started drawing, maybe like, I don't know, 4 years old, 5 years old. And, I swore I was going to become a comic book artist, though I didn't know how I was going to go about doing it, obviously. Because I came from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. You had to go to New York City.
Yeah. What were some of the first comic books you were picking up? Who were some of the, even like as you got a little bit older, some of the creators that you started looking at?
Turok, Son of Stone. It was Alberto Gialetti, an Italian comic book artist. He also drew like Half Gun Will Travel. And as a kid, I used to copy the drawings, but I couldn't figure out why it looked so real, not knowing he was shooting photographs like L. Williamson or Alex Raymond. And I liked Gorgo, that was drawn by Monteson Beige and Steve Ditko. I liked all the war comics, all the artwork by Kubert, Russ Heath. I liked a lot of the Charlton artists too, for that matter, like Sam Glantzman. One of the big influences was Conan Monarch of Monster Exile by Dell Comics.
Okay.
That he drew. It had cavemen and dinosaurs and sharks and all sorts of stuff. It's great.
And I was reading, so when I was reading up on you, I saw that you were printing your own comics and you were selling them to like fanzines and stuff like that. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I started finding out about, it was a Rocket Blast comic collector. I saw an ad in a Marvel or DC comic, and it said, if you're a comic book collector, you want to get this, and it tells you where to get back issues of comics. There were no stores at the time. You couldn't get back issues of comics. So what I did is I started seeing that they were printing fanzines, so I started sending artwork to them. And then I got my own diddle machine. And it was a used diddle machine, and I started publishing my own comics at 15. And so what that later on would do is it showed me how to produce a comic book, how to get it printed. So that's why later on I printed my own comic books, went to the printer, paid the printer, and did my own distribution. I did that for other people. Whoever wanted to do a comic book, like Thor or John Jacobs, I would produce and handle the whole thing.
Man, that's crazy. Like, it's such an exciting time in comics too, because I know it's like nowadays it's so much easier to get comics made where you don't even have to be the one making them. Like, you can just, there's print on demand, stuff like that. I also saw that you wrote letters to like some of the creators, and that Steve Ditko and Joe Kubert actually wrote like back to you, right?
Yes, they did. Actually, any artist I wrote at the time would write back. It was strange because, first of all, there was nobody cared about those artists, right? Nobody even knew who they were, So like, I would find out. I didn't even know who the Turok artist was. I called him that. It would take a while till I found out his name. So a lot of this stuff was very mysterious. And if you would write a cartoonist, they would tell you what pen they use, what brush they use, and they would basically encourage you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like nowadays, like you're definitely not getting the response. I mean, you can message people on social media and stuff, obviously, stuff like that. But it's just so cool to hear like that, two of the greats like were sitting there writing letters. And I think there's something more personal about that,
Yes, there were no schools at the time also, you have to take in consideration. So the only way you could learn this was either to contact these guys. Like, I didn't even know what original art looked like. I didn't know that till I came as an adult to New York City. I didn't know what penciling looked like. They never showed you a pencil page. I didn't know what inking was. I figured it was done with a pen, and it wasn't. It was done with a brush. Art teachers would tell me stuff like, "Oh, I think it's an engraving technique." So nobody had a clue. I remember a guidance counselor one time. I told him I wanted to be a comic book artist, and he says, "Well, I really can't help you."
I mean, nowadays, yeah, like you said, like there's schools for it now, so it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to kind of get the tools and the knowledge. But it's cool to hear how, from a young age, like you were seeking that knowledge any way you can. I know I've seen like Wally Wood being an influence also on you, Gil Kane, Wrightson, obviously, and that you studied with Will Eisner and Harvey Kurtzman as well.
Yes, that came when I got to New York City after I got out of the military. I had the GI Bill, so I went to school for free, but I also had won a scholarship at SBA.
Mm.
So I could have went there for free either way. And so I went there, and I was a first year student. They were telling me that's second and third year class. So first of all, most of the kids that were in that class, there was, with the exception of maybe five guys, didn't even bring in homework assignments. I would bring in a homework assignment every single week, and I usually would correct it. And then Kurtzman even said, "What is Landgraf the only one bringing in pages to be critiqued?"
Yeah.
Pretty much it. It was ridiculous. And one time Gil Kane came into the class. That's how I got associated with him.
Hmm.
He was giving a lecture in Kurtzman's class, and I followed him down the stairs, ran or left the room, ran after him, and said, "I want to be your assistant." And he had seen that I was influenced by him heavily, so he told me meet me up at Marvel next week on Friday. And that's how I started getting involved with him. It was like amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of creators have worked with Gil Kane too, doing like assistant work. I think like Chaikin, if I
Right.
remember correctly, also. So what was your first like professional work that you didn't self-publish?
Well, I would think it might have been covers for Screw magazine. Um, and later on, of course, it was Hawkman and Nightwing and Flamebird and all that stuff at DC. And then I got lucky with the Wolverine at Marvel. That was the first solo appearance of the Wolverine in the story, so that's historically important.
Right.
So Jim Shooter gave that to me to draw.
Yeah, that was a great time at Marvel. A lot of this comic books coming around that period are some of the ones that I've definitely gone back and seeked out. I want to know too, like because like this is the kind of the period you were also teaching comic book drawing and anatomy in the
Yes,
80s.
yes, I was. I had started that with 92nd Street Y, which was a real prestigious after-school program. I did that in 1978. I just sent them a letter. I said, I want to teach a class in comic book drawing. Would you be interested? So I started teaching there. And then I saw that Ralph Reese had turned down a teaching job at Parsons, and it said instructor to be announced. So I just applied for it. And what I did is I had all this stuff memorized, like I could draw these Byrne Hogarth low angle shots of like gods fighting and stuff. So I
Hmm.
just put it all on a chalkboard and right in front of the guy that was going to hire me, and he hired me immediately. So I started doing that, and then later on, they asked if I wanted to teach anatomy because I was always interested in teaching because it was like a kind of an exciting, like almost like doing like a movie or something. You know, going into the classroom and showing how to draw. And I had books too that I was printing, so I was also selling the how to draw books.
Yeah.
So that was the actual one of the big incentives to it. And I actually went from teaching college to drawing for kids classes on Saturday mornings.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was also there was a lot of fly-by-night schools at the time, like the Discovery Learning Center was like an adult education class. It's like really was for singles to meet each other.
Hmm.
So they took me on as a comic teacher. So there was a lot of these schools. I must have taught it maybe for 5 different schools at one time. This was all like before dinner time, and then I'd do my own stuff after dinner.
Oh man, yeah, that's the hustle, man, you know?
Yeah,
Like what was the process like for you when you were publishing like New York City Outlaws and Starfighter? Like did you do that by yourself with another publisher? How did those projects kind of come into play?
I was basically hired by someone to draw it, or I did the paying out. Like I hired Neil Adams for the covers 3 times to
Hmm.
ink me. I hired Mondo Gill, Joe Rubenstein, Jack Abel, whoever I ran into at Continuity Publishing. I would hire them and pay them decent amounts of money to draw pages for ink pages.
Hmm.
And then what I do is I take all the artwork to the printer and basically try to get the cheapest rate I could. And I knew how to do color separations. I knew how to do the artwork, how to clean it up. So I would basically give the entire package to the printer. You'd print it, and of course I had to pay him. So that's your first big loss of money. It might have been $1,000. So you had to get that money back before you even made a profit. And then you would deal with Phil Suling and distributors, and they would say, you were supposed to get 60/40. I was supposed to get 60%. They would always say, well, I'm going to give you 50%, but I'm going to take 1,000 issues or 500 issues. Even Jim Steranko did that. He sold it in media scene around, just comic. Everyone to every single comic book store too, and dropped off copies.
That's cool, man. It's definitely like the grassroots kind of punk rock way of doing it, like hand selling it yourself. That's awesome.
Mhm.
It's kind of crazy because like I don't know if you're familiar with like the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel and kind of how they started talking about New York City outlaws on their channel. So it's kind
Yes,
of like it gave like a new life to the title and stuff. I know you did that Apocalypse 3000 book with Floating World Comics. And I'm pretty sure New York City Outlaws is getting a reprint, if I remember correctly.
yes, that's being worked on right now. It's floating world again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what has that been like for you to see this like resurgence of this like popularity and cult like popularity surrounding this book that came out in the 80s?
Well, of course, I'm grateful for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're only have any kind of fame because of the fans. Like I was a fan of all those comic book artists. I worshiped them all.
Mm-hmm.
And like Ben Mara particularly was influenced by me. So, I mean, that's like, that was kind of shocking at first because it was always like I was, you know, being influenced by Russ Heath or Wood or Sam Glansman or Neil Adams. And then they turned out that they were being influenced by me, and it was quite an honor.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool the way things come around. When composing a page, how much of it is like instinctual and how much do you plan or like come up with like a strategy in terms of the way you're going to attack it?
It was an instinct. The inking is instinct.
Okay.
I would do dynamic symmetry patterns where you take like a point in the middle of the page and fan out lines all over it, like a perspective, like a
Mm-hmm.
1 point perspective, and fit the figures into those constructions. Construct the figure to fit those things, which is what Gil Kane did in John Buscema. That's why the page always, you could turn the page upside down, it would still look good
Mm-hmm.
because it was planned and compositionally.
And how many days, or I mean, not how many days, how many hours a day do you spend drawing?
Well, I get up around 10:30. I usually go to the park with my wife and we have lunch. And I usually start around 2:30, quarter to 3, and I work up till 5 o'clock, but I work really hard to get layouts done. I
Mm-hmm.
don't eat dinner until I have the thing laid out. And then, I might take a nap or something. And but then I go work very fiercely from, let's say, 6:30, 7 o'clock up till around 11. And then I'll also sometimes continue into the night if I feel like it. Might last till 5 in the morning.
And is this something that like since you started, is this something you've always done? Like no matter what, like drawing has always been a part of your life?
Yes, and I swore like when I was a kid, I always heard about starving artists.
Mm-hmm.
People would make fun of that all the time. Comedians, uh, I'd hear stories about like Van Gogh. So I swore that I was going to make a living drawing no matter what. So I never had like a job.
I mean, hey, that's the dream, right? Like that's the dream of every artist. Before we get into some of the stuff that you're currently doing, I'm kind of curious. I know that you worked in when you kind of weren't maybe doing as much comic book stuff, but you were doing a lot of commercial art, right? For like film and television. How did that kind of come into play in your career?
I used to put up flyers all over the city saying that I had a comic book art class on Saturday and Sunday. And people actually would pick this up. Like I was shocked because like all of a sudden Law and Order, the set designer and the director actually found my flyer. Nobody knew how to contact a comic book artist at the time. There was no
Really?
internet.
Yeah.
And what would happen is I'd get these calls from a film director, directly from a film director or something. It was weird. And I remember for Teddy Bear Habit, I forget who the director was. You could look that up. They had Roger Daltrey in the movie, and they had Sam Watterson, and they hired me to show him how to basically draw a comic book, and they copied my studio even for it. The movie never got made, but that was an early project. And uh, all of a sudden, I got a call from Bill Cosby,
Oh wow.
not personally, but his assistant. And he asked if I wanted to work on the Cosby Mysteries. He had a thing called The Comic Book Murderer, which you can see on YouTube. Just punch in Cosby Mysteries and punch in comic book murders. and you'll see my artwork actually used on the screen.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so wherever there's a character, there's or a costume. I designed the costumes, and so everything was designed by me. Fake comic books. Same thing with Law and Order, was about a murderer publisher. So whenever they go into like the artist studio, that's all my artwork.
That's cool. How does that, like, in terms of like, not, I wouldn't say enjoyment, but like the difference of like producing a comic book page and then doing stuff like that. Like, how does that differ for you?
There was a major difference. First of all, they always had free food, booze, everything when you come in. I mean, it was like, I never got treated like that. You're treated with absolute respect.
Yeah.
No knew anything about it, so they were always, like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And all that type of thing. But the main thing was, it was amazing because everything was like catered. I remember one time, none of the actors wanted to take any of the food and stuff and the cake and everything. I took it all home.
That's that's funny.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, I forgot to ask when we were talking about him, but do you have like any cool like Will Eisner stories, like in terms of like how it pertained with you?
Yes, he was mercilessly correcting artwork, which is great because he was like a lot of the art teachers would go, "Oh, that's nice." Being they didn't want to get involved with you, or they didn't want to like mark up your drawing. Eisner marked it all up like crazy. He'd suggest layouts. He'd work over your stuff with tracing paper, but you had to put out the effort to get him to even want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd bring in pages, and there were other guys that were become famous in the class, like John Holstrom. He did the covers for the Ramones.
Right.
Bob Wyachek was in the class because these were all advanced students. So there were a few guys in there. Ken Lager, he became a famous Western painter. So it was interesting because they were like more advanced than me in a sense because they already gone through the first or second year of schooling.
And in terms of coming up with your style, I mean, I know like on the Kayfabe channel they call it an outlaw style, right? Like heavy inks and stuff like that. But and I know like some of the creators that you like, but in terms of coming up with your distinct style, like what were you looking at when you came up with the style that we all know and love?
First of all, Wallace Wood, Sam Glansman, Matt Fox, who used to ink Larry Lieber in these backup stories, and it was a Marvel comic like Human Torch or something. There'd be a science fiction backup story,
Mm-hmm.
and he would like ink the hell out of the page, whatever petagraph, before everybody knew what that was. And Monas and Beish were heavy renderers. They did Gorgo and Reptilosaurus. Steve Ditko, for like action movement. Hogarth, who he was the one that everybody worshipped, especially Gil Kane. That was his main idol. He'd always compare himself to Bernie Hogarth, he'd call him, and say, "I think my constructions of these figures are equal to Hogarth." He'd constantly say that. So he was always comparing himself to master comic book artists.
And you recently you did because I know like there's a way for people to get commissions from you, which I think is super cool. And you did a couple pages in this Ghost Agents book with my friend Rocco. So what like in terms of like you're producing comic art, I know you did stuff with like the all-time comics also, like, but your comic work has kind of been sporadic for the most part. So how are the projects that you have done over the past few years coming to you, or are you seeking them out? Like, how does that come about?
I I haven't really seeked stuff out. I happen to have patrons that were wealthy collectors from the 1970s and 80s. Like maybe one was a lawyer, for instance, or they inherited money. So a lot of these guys to this day are commissioning me to draw stuff for them. So I mean, there's a whole pile of this kind of stuff all over the studio
Oh
almost.
yeah, love to see that.
And a lot of this is on my own, stuff that I feel like drawing. Like I did a whole series of Hawkman smashing Germans or Japanese soldiers with his mace because
Oh,
they
that's
never
awesome.
stopped using the mace.
Before we like move past this though, and I'll drop the link down below, but how can people reach out to you for commissions?
I have they can contact me through emails at Ken Landgraf at earthlink.net. And sometimes I'll have stuff on eBay. Sometimes Heritage will put up like heavy mounts in my auctions.
Hmm.
There's other guys that sell my artwork. So I'm always like looking for more ways to sell artwork because I produce at least one drawing a day if I'm not doing a comic project.
Wow,
So
that's
there's a
crazy.
stack here of maybe 300 drawings.
Oh man, yeah, it's definitely on my list. When I get some extra cash, I definitely want to pick something up from you.
There he is, the man himself.
All right, cool. Well,
Mr.
now that
Landgraf, how are you doing?
Right.
Nice
all
to
right,
see
well,
you.
now that we got Mr. Kirk Oldford here with us, we're going to be talking about your latest project, Ken. Ink Zeitgeist. I got both of you here, so let's kind of talk about how did this project come about?
I want to start that one out. First of all,
Yeah.
Kirk was one of the guys that was commissioned me to do artwork, and he always had these crazy, funny ideas. Like every time I would draw one, it was like laughing. He'd have like Bullwinkle on to blow up, being blown up by Boris Badenov, or he had like very unusual concepts of putting in different pop culture images. And finally, after a while, I said, Kirk, why don't we work on a comic book page instead of just doing these commissions? And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he comes up with a whole comic book. I don't know if he was planning this all along or if he was creating these characters from scratch. And the fun thing about working with him was everything that he came up with, you couldn't copy because it didn't exist in another comic book. You had to come up with like one thing he had was a page panel crushing these villains. So the page moves in and crushes them, all this blood squirting out and everything. So that was very hard pressed to do that. What I did is I filmed a book opening like this. And I kept looking and like, how is this going to look? Where's the impact?
Mm-hmm.
So, but he's very imaginative and a very bright, smart guy, which is why I wanted to work with him.
Thank you, Ken. That means a lot. That means a lot coming from Landgraf. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, like that's awesome. I mean, like so Kirk, let's hear from your side.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, that's the bare bones story. So I've been a fan of Ken's art for a long time. I'm a collector of artwork. It doesn't my realm of interest is not exclusively comic book art. Ken and I both live in Queens. And so when I learned about Ken, I started commissioning some stuff. And as he mentioned, a lot of it's fun stuff. I can show you some of it here if you'd like to see it. If you want to get a sense for the sensibility of Ink Zeitgeist, I'll tell you about the story, but this is going to give you the sensibility of Ink Zeitgeist. So let me just show you a couple of my favorites here. Let me see if I can get them here quickly. And I think, and a lot of people really gravitate towards Ken's art. So, he's an influencer's influencer, right? If you look at the people that have gotten behind this project, it's really a who's list of very much of people who are at the lead within the industry, right? So a lot of people are really like Ken's sensibility. His inking is just amazing. Here's one I'll show you, and this is going to kind of just set the stage so you can get a sense for kind of the spirit of what we're working with here. And so what do we have here? It's and let me know. I haven't done this on Zoom before, so what do we have here?
So, Vanilla Ice.
It's vanilla. So here's the deal. It's Vanilla Ice in a grocery store fighting ninjas, solving Euler's equation. Okay, and then there's a caption and it says, "If there was a problem, yo, I'll solve it." And then it's Vanilla Ice from the song Ice Ice Baby. Now, Ryan, here's the deal. If this doesn't tickle you, then you don't have a heart, right?
Now I see why Ken was laughing at your commission.
So it's just been a ton of fun coming up with these ideas. But the execution is just so amazing. So when Ken said, hey, let's do a comic, for a long time I've been thinking, and I've seen a lot of comments like, why doesn't Ken Landgraf have a Kickstarter?
Yeah, dude.
So this is the answer to that, right? So I'll tell you a little bit about Ink Zeitgeist. So the fun of Ink Zeitgeist, and I don't fancy myself Shakespeare. I don't fancy myself Alan Moore. I fancy myself the guy that comes up with ideas like this, right? So if you like this, I hope you'll like Ink Zeitgeist. It's a self-contained story. It occurs in Inktown, And this is really it's a low class, but it's a really fun destination. It's filled with bowling alleys, tattoo parlors, it has flea markets. Some of this, Ryan, is based on real world experience. Actually, all of it's been informed by real world experience. So these are real places, but who lives in Inktown? Vampires, wizards, street hustlers, hooligans. Our heroes are called the Noir Club, and the Noir Club, it's a 4-member gang. There is a 50s diner waitress. She's a samurai. There is someone who is an arcade token jockey. She's a pro wrestler, a lucha libre pro wrestler to be precise. There's a circus magician, and then there's a paper delivery guy, and he's also part ghoul. And so they need to hustle to raise some money. So it has a 3-act structure. There's a conflict. They have to hustle up and raise some money. And but standing in their way is Max McGuffin, and this guy is the kingpin in Inktown, and they have to overcome a lot of the obstacles that he presents to them with some of his associates, which are vampires and aliens and so on. And so the big question is, will they be able to save money to raise? Will they be able to save money to get Aunt Thelma's operation? She needs a screen tone valve, and there are a lot of jokes in there. There's also a lot of drama. There's a lot of serious elements. If you like Landgraf's art and you thought, what would be a great story to put that art to work, that was my goal here. So there's on the Kickstarter, you can get a sense for, what the characters look like, what some of the elements of the plot. And then in the updates, we've also included some of the artwork too. Inkzeitgeist.com also has a few of the pages there as well.
Right on. And in terms of like the collaboration with you guys, like I know you're writing it, Kirk, but Ken, like how much input are you having into story as well, or are you just letting Kirk kind of run rampant with his ideas?
I follow his outline very closely. I don't even know if I added really that much. I did stuff with the characters.
Ken's being modest. Ken added an incredible amount, especially the visual. So. Sorry, Ken. You keep going. I don't want to, but Ken is being. I'll give some details, but go ahead, Ken.
I basically would take his scripts and then do a layout like Gil Kane for each page, and then send it off to Kirk, and then maybe he would come up with some different ideas. So then we'd change the layout around. Like one of the things was a bowling alley wizard. I came up with very dynamic poses for that. First of all, I'm not a fan of bowling, so I went way out of my way to make it dynamic as hell. And then he said that, well, maybe the wizard should have like a wizard cap, which I didn't even consider that. I just like, what is this guy? So I added like this wizard cap with Saturn planets on it, moons and half crescent moons, and that basically became the character. So I did that with a lot of the things. Like he would say there's a carnival scene or there's a pinball machine area. So I would look through all these old comic books, like how people drew pinball machines, and I would basically just come up with these visuals. And then he would add jokes in, like I would draw like a thin man at the circus or a fat lady or something, and he would come up with these weird names for them. So it was always funny to see what he's going to come up with. And then he would come up with these things like a flea market. I mean, who wants to draw that? So I really had to think, well, what's in a flea market? I tried to make like a Wally Wood panel for Mad where it's all cluttered. So it was a lot of that type of improvisation from his scripts.
And how much, well, I guess how many pages is the book going to be?
So yeah, it's currently 30. So it's 31 pages. However, in Ink Zeitgeist, there are the patrons can also have a likeness. So Ken's actually working on the likenesses, and it looks like he's maybe going to show us there. And maybe we could give a shout out. I think I see Matt King there. He's been really helpful.
Oh, I see Matt.
Yeah,
bottom left.
Matt's giving us a ton of advice. So Matt has some new Yep, there we go. Yeah, definitely check out Matt King's Etsy site, which
Man, I didn't even see that tier. I gotta go back on there. I gotta throw myself on there.
Yeah, no, you can get your likeness in there. And so all in the Ink Zeitgeist story specifically will be 31 pages plus however many, Ken's putting about 8 or so people per likeness page. They're in a mosh pit. They're fighting mythological creature. I don't know how much spoiler territory we go into here, Ryan, if I should mention the type of creature they're fighting. But since you're getting the inside scoop here, they're fighting goblins in a mosh pit in a punk rock bar. So it's going to be the core story plus the patron pages plus we have some outlaw. We have some outlaw one pagers. So a lot of the original commission work or separate concepts that we came up with, we put together. So there'll be several of those pages included as well. So we'll get the total figured out once we know how many patron pages are coming in. But it's going to be in excess of the complete story will be 32 pages, but the whole book will be in excess of that.
Very cool. I just upped my pledge.
Awesome. And I just got a buzz on my phone.
So what's next for this? Like, I mean, like, is there any stretch goals kind of planned? I'm not sure how many days are left on the campaign. I didn't notice that just now.
So we've got I think 11 days left.
Okay.
So we're doing updates on every Tuesday. Next Tuesday would be the 4th update, and then we'd have 3 days after that. We did hit our goal. So we're kind of exploring the stretch goals. In terms of so we're seeing a lot more interest since we've posted the likenesses. Some of the likenesses, we're seeing more interest there. So we're strategizing that if we're going to pivot that to something like a stretch goal. But for the time being, we're sort of keeping things at the current level.
Right, cool.
Yeah. And
then, I mean, the best part about it is getting to see all those pages, Ken, that you have. Everything is hand drawn. Everything is like traditional, which I absolutely love. I think that's it's partially missing from comics nowadays. I don't want to say I don't like stuff that's done digitally, but there's something about it that when I know it's done traditionally, plus like you have the ability to like get the pages, which I think like nowadays some artists you can't even get original pages from because they're all done digitally. So I love that you still draw traditionally and stuff like that.
Well, I would never sell like a print of my artwork. Yeah. I always wanted the collector to have the original artwork. I mean, that's what this is about. I wouldn't pay money for a digital printout. Then again, in that comic that I did, what was the name of it again with that spy comic?
Ghost Agents.
Okay, somebody colored me in there and it was magnificent. It looked like a black light poster. I would never came up with that type of coloring. So a lot of times I like to do the artwork and then turn it over to these young artists that are going to mess around with it and add their own touch on it. I mean, as long as I'm drawing it and inking it, or I also like to ink other artists. Like I've done quite a few inking jobs for that Floating World and what is that? The Odd
All Time Comics.
Yeah, All Time Comics. So I was able to ink quite a few guys in there, Ben Mera and Josh Bear. So that was amazing, and that was an honor too, because these are young artists influenced by me, and I was able to add my own touch to it, which is a certain type of crazy amount of inking. So I would love to do more of that, but then again, I'm very happy just working on Kirk's comics. I wouldn't mind doing that for the rest of my career. Actually,
we got to keep these black and white dollars rolling in, Ken. We'll keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm here for all of it. I just want to give a shout out to Christian Misi, who colored your pages in the Ghost Agent book, because he's a phenomenal artist himself, but his coloring over your art was like next level. Like he really kicked it up a notch in terms of his coloring that he did.
Yes, that could have been sold as posters, for example. I mean, that was so powerful and crazy. I looked at it and I thought, wow, man, look at this coloring combination. A lot of times guys will color and they stay within the same exact tones, like earth colors, and then you can't even see the art. It doesn't stand out. The main trick was, I remember Paul Levitz one time and Marie Severin, he took a page and it was colored and he turned it upside down and he said, can you see all the shapes? Of course he could, because they were trained to color it properly. Marie Severin was the EC colorist for, Tales from the Crypt and the science fiction things, all that type of stuff. So the colorists back then specifically would make sure that all the artwork popped.
And then in terms of I know you're still doing the likeness pages because the campaign's not done and people are still able to, like, I just added myself. So, but how far along are you on the book? Is the actual book done at this point?
Kirk?
Book is totally completed. Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. So we had it completely finished before we opened the Kickstarter. I've got it here, or I've got some of it here. And I've got another, so you can see all the pages here. It's all completed. So yeah, so we wanted to make sure we finished it before we started, because this was our first Kickstarter. So we just wanted to control for as many of those types of things as we could. Sorry if wasn't on camera there. So you can see I've got all the pages here. I've got another book here that has all the other pages in it right here. The whole thing, yeah, the whole thing's done. Yeah, we wanted to get as much of it done. Actually, here's a really cool Landgraf Moses. This one's really outstanding.
Dude, that is fucking killer.
Yeah, it's just really, I mean, this stuff is just fantastic. It really is. But yeah, I've got it all here. It's all done. All of the original 31 pages plus the cover. That's all done. Let's see what I have here.
I don't often say I'm jealous of people, but I'm jealous of your Landgraf collection of art.
No, it's super. These are super cool. These are just really outstanding. This is more. Here's Judith. Here's Judith beheading Bethulia. If you're a Caravaggio fan, this is Landgraf's take on that classic piece. So yeah, so Landgraf can really knock it out of the park when he's working on sort of Western canon stuff. That's just outstanding stuff. But yeah, I've got, let's see where those were all the pages. So yeah, it's all done except for the likenesses, but you can see that they're being worked on it as we speak.
Yeah, right on. I mean, like, and Ken's already said he'll keep doing it. So do you guys have plans? Like what's kind of next?
This one's going really well, and I think there was a lot of learning that occurred on this one. So I'm pretty handy with Adobe Illustrator at this point. I have the process down. I understand a little bit. Well, I understand the distribution and how to do a Kickstarter. So all of these things were there was a little bit of a learning process there, but I feel like we were able to figure it out fairly quickly. So yeah, we would love to just keep doing this. We've seen that the support that we've seen has been amazing. I've been sending Ken a lot of the messages that people have been sending to me. Oh, when I was a kid, I read X, and it's not always New York City Outlaws. There's a lot of other things that people really gravitated towards, and they've been reaching out and giving us that feedback that I've been sharing with Ken. So that's been super exciting. So yeah, the support that we've seen is just really been amazing. Yeah, and so we'd love to keep doing it.
And then in terms of obviously the Kickstarter backers are going to get the book, but is there any other platform that either one of you have thought? I mean, Ken, I know you have your history, you would go to shops and sell the books. So is there any other avenue for people? Are you printing only for the Kickstarter? Are you going to print a little bit extra? Are you going to try to get into some shops? Is there have retailers backed it in any kind of way?
Ken, you used to sell directly to Steranko, right? If I'm not mistaken. Maybe we can give it. Do you still have his phone number?
No, I don't think he's publishing Media Scene anymore.
Well, not until he hasn't seen the Ink Zeitgeist yet, Ken. Let's give him a call.
Yeah.
Stay tuned, Ryan. You don't know. You never know what you're gonna where things will show up.
All right, cool.
But nothing is given. So if this is an interesting project for you, there's no guarantee it's going to end up in other places. So get on board.
Yeah, definitely get out there and back the Kickstarter. I mean, I know we're talking with 11 days left on the Kickstarter. I'm posting it a couple days after we're chatting. It'll be live for people to watch and check out.
Awesome.
I'm super stoked that this project is even coming out. I'm a late fan to Landgraf's work. I kind of discovered over the past few years, especially through the Kayfabe channel. I've gone back and got stuff. Obviously, I talked to Ken about that Apocalypse 3000 book that came out. I know New York City Outlaws is getting reprinted. But when I saw this project was coming out, I mean, I just about lost my shit. And I know I'm not the only one that felt that way. I know there's a lot of people excited. Like you said, the support has been really good. I'm excited to see what you guys kind of do in the future with more stuff like this.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, no, it's really an honor to come on and get a chance. I Landgraf's the star of this, so I'll turn it back over to him. But your show is excellent. It's very inspirational. Whenever I need some motivation, I watch I think I've told you this before. I watched your McFarlane interview. So you don't have to be a fan of Spawn. If you watch that interview, you're gonna pick up energy if you watch that. So whenever I need a little pick me up, I watch that interview.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. It's always nice to hear when somebody digs what I'm doing, because like obviously like I don't have the most subscribers on YouTube, but I don't have the most views, but like I do this because I love comic books and I love sharing, about comic books, whether it's something from Marvel, DC, or whether it's something like self-published and it's got like a print run of 20, like I just love spreading the love of comics. So like I appreciate the compliment you just gave. So
awesome show.
Yeah, thank you, man. And then Ken, so besides Ink Zeitgeist, is there anything else that you have in the works?
No, I'm always like waiting for different projects. Like I said, I like working with Josh Bear. I like working with Ben Mara. So hopefully they'll send some stuff along the way. Otherwise, I'm just doing these commissions, and we'll see. I might also start some. I had came up with an idea of stories I want to draw, which maybe would involve like Kirk and maybe other writers. That's just a possible project, but I mostly want to stick to the Ink Zeitgeist thing right now.
Well, if that ever happens, I want to be one of those writers in that Landgraf book.
Yes, that's what I thought would be a cool idea. That would be all orchestrated through Kirk, though, I think.
Okay.
So we'll see. I didn't even tell you about that idea. I was thinking about it yesterday, Kirk.
That sounds like a. So Ken was not giving himself enough credit earlier. You were asking, how you guys collaborated. So I would come up with the concept, but Ken's visual, Ken's intuition for coming up with a visual language for things is really something. So this is just so much fun. But to come up with a concept or to come up with some kind of structure and give it to Ken and then see what he can do with it is that's just so much fun. So yeah, Ken, that sounds exciting. So we should explore that.
Yeah, I'm definitely here for anything Landgraf, dude. And I'm super stoked this project is coming out. Like I said before, I love the support that I'm seeing from, like within the Kayfabe Ringside Seats group. Like, I know you're part of Kirk. And Ken, like, I just want to say thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Kirk, thank you for middlemaning this.
This is the first. Ken, am I correct in this? This is the first time that you've been recorded for an interview. So Ryan, this is like the real deal stuff. This is like, this is where the work rate. This is where the work rate is high. Where we're at right now. This is an exclusive. You got Ken. You'll have to have Ken back because I missed the first part of the interview, but Ken knows everything. So Ken was around for all of it. So I was just at Storenko, like, oh yeah, I used to sell comics directly to Storenko. So you're gonna have to get him back on because
Ken, I definitely want to have you back on. I knew I kind of wanted to make a little bit about your past stuff, but I know I wanted to focus on the Kickstarter too because like I know that the campaign's running right now. But Ken, definitely, if you're up for it, I would definitely love to chat with you again.
Well, I would love that. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, it's true what Kirk said. I knew everybody in the business. I used to go up to Continuity and watch Neil Adams draw all day. He let me sit right by his side, and he was working on the Conan page, inking it with his brush because he had said he had done comics for years with his Crow Quill pens and Gillette pens, and he wanted to see if he could still command a brush inking. So he inked the whole Conan job with a brush. I also saw it when the Pope came to town. Neil Adams was hired to draw a mirror with the Pope's image. They had, I think, a coloring book on Jimmy Carter. Neil could handle anything, and he would draw while he was being interrupted with phone calls, and he would have like a Mellow Mars. That was one of his favorite snacks. It was like a bakery type thing filled with like chocolate or something, and he'd go through like a whole bag of those while he was working. And he was also very interesting because he would have no mercy on other artists coming up there. If you show your artwork, I remember the first time I came up there, he said, "You want some advice? Go back home." He said, and then one time he took a drawing. He said, "Is this your best drawing?" And he ripped it into shreds right in front of me and said, "Let's go home and draw it again. If you can't draw it again, you're not going to be able to work on an editor." So I was used to that type of stuff because I had a military background. It was no problem for me. I'd seen other artists go in there and cry, big guys worshiping Neil, and Neil would put down the artwork. Or he would, and what was good about him, if he liked you, you were blessed by him, almost like he was some kind of king. Like he would say, you can go into that room and make photocopies of any of the artwork you want for 5 cents because you had a copy machine. So I used to always bring in a couple bucks and make photocopies of originals. So it was
That's
just
super cool.
Yeah. Well, before, talking about like the kind of advice that you were given, before I let you go, what kind of advice would you give to a cartoonist coming up now?
There's more creative people in the world than ever now. It's like ridiculous, actually. Like I go on, I don't go on Instagram much. My wife is actually putting my stuff up on Instagram, or Kirk says, will you post this? I don't know how to do it. I have no interest. It's hard enough to sit here and draw all day.
Mm-hmm.
So what it comes down to basically is I just want to draw and not be interrupted and get the work out. And like I said, I always start a page and I won't have dinner until I got that page laid out, because the rest of it's just fun. It's inking.
Mm-hmm.
You can just have fun inking, but the work is taking somebody's script or yours and putting it on the page. That's hard as hell to do for anybody. And as far as the new artists, they have all these new ways of showing their artwork, like these interviews. You could become famous if you got on this, or a bunch of these things. And you drew like sexy women, good superheroes, great animals, or whatever it is, characters. You could build a reputation from scratch. You don't have to have any fame. And I think that's amazing, actually. But there's not many places to sell the artwork. Like when I was in New York, there were the Shark magazines, there was the UFO magazines, there was Screw magazine, you could draw covers for it. There was all the girly magazines. I was working for religious companies, drawing all these things like Mary, the Mother of God. I did a whole series of those. You can find them on Amazon if you go. There's around maybe 20 for Barber Books. I just did biographies. And I didn't care what I was drawing. I mean, as long as I was drawing, I made a certain reputation for the shark magazines because I had the people being ripped apart by the sharks. That was for like Jaws of Death, Jaws of Blood. That was all published by the Foss brother publishing companies countrywide. So there were places like that. Then I worked for years for Vantage Press, which was a pay per get your book published. I must have illustrated 200 books for them. So there was all, and then I used to buy the artist market book. I'd go through the whole entire artist market book and send out a brochure of myself that I'm available for work, and I get these jobs. Sometimes they last for years. So it was a very exciting time. Now, the artists, they have to either publish their stuff through Kickstarter, which is a brand new thing. I wasn't interested in that. Kirk got me into it. I was thinking, why is he going to do that when you can just pay the publisher $2,000 and print the book and then start selling it? So I didn't know how that worked. So I of course wouldn't have went into that without him. So
well, I'm glad he got you into doing it, man. And I'm very stoked for this book. I'm super glad that I'm going to be drawn into it. And this project that you are talking about, with other people writing stories for you, I think that's awesome as well. And I just want to thank you so much again for taking time, Kirk. I'm so glad you could join us.
Thank you, Ryan.
Talk about the book. And Ken will definitely do this again in the future.
Great.
And for everybody listening and watching too, real quick, I just want to say I'll drop the links down below for the Kickstarter. I'll drop the links down for Ken where you can find him online as well. And one more thing you want to say, Kirk?
No, I was just going to say it's been a real honor to be on. Shout out to Matt King. So his new Tales to Enlighten, he's been giving me shout outs everywhere. So I have to make sure that I return the favor. So the new Tales to Enlighten is on his Etsy site. So maybe include a link for him too.
I'll drop that link down below. I know.
Yeah, because this was all new and he's helped me out a ton, giving me advice and so yeah, want to make sure we keep the whole ecosystem happy here, right?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, he's awesome. And him and I are going to be doing an episode where we go through the book. It might be like 3 hours. I don't know. It's a big boy. So, but yes, again, thank you guys so much.
Awesome.
I had a blast.
Thank you.
And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Bye,
Thank you, guys.